Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 4th of January of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to continue our topic about massive missile strike that took place today. The Ukrainians were attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia. We have several explosions on the territory of Smolensk. The Ukrainians are saying that they managed to destroy one of the largest rocket building holdings in the Russian Federation. We don't know for sure whether this information is correct or not, because we don't have any video that can confirm the strike or explosion. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Ukrainians attacked the territory industrial buildings and military facilities in the vicinity of the St. Petersburg, and as you can see, St. Petersburg is located very far from the territory of Ukraine, and some military experts are saying that Ukrainians were using drones from the territory of the NATO countries, from the territory of Estonia, and also the Ukrainians were attacking the Belgorod direction. As for this attack today, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave us some statement about that attack. The Russians are saying that today, on the January 3rd, the Ukrainians made another attempt to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia using American-made ATACMS operational tactical missiles, but the Russians are saying that they managed to bring down every single one. And by the end of the 4th of January, we haven't received even a single video that can confirm that Ukrainians managed to destroy anything. So everything was repelled by the Russian side. So this is the situation, but even despite the fact that the Russians managed to destroy everything, most likely in the very near future the Russians will answer and they will attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, probably with some new missiles or with Aviation. For example, today the Russians already attacked the territory of Chernihiv. We have several videos with explosions, and the Ukrainians are saying that that was something new. They haven't seen this missile before. The Ukrainians, when talking about the missiles, they saying that they disappeared and then reappeared. Unknown missiles with a speed of up to 8,000 kilometers per hour attacked Ukrainian targets in Chernihiv. Anyway, we don't know for sure what is happening right now, but one thing I can tell you, that the Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of another full-scale offensive operation, most likely that will take place somewhere in the territory of Russian Federation. Today we got a lot of updates that the United States of America has stepped up the transfer of military cargo for Ukraine through Polish seaports. Thus, on December 30th, the transport ship MV Cape Kennedy from the U.S. Navy Reserve Fleet arrived at the port of Gdańsk, and on December 28th, the USNS Red Cloud of the U.S. Naval Sea Fleet Command arrived at the port of Gdynia. These ships have significant cargo capacity and several decks, which allows them to transport up to 1,000 vehicles, including trucks, armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, tanks, and armored personnel carriers. So according to, as we understand, somewhere in the end of December, the Ukrainians received significant batch of military equipment, maybe even thousands of vehicles, and obviously these thousands of vehicles the Ukrainians are planning to use somewhere along the border, obviously not to counterattack somewhere in the Donetsk direction or somewhere else. They will attack probably in the Bryansk direction or in the Belgorod direction, with the purpose to stress the Russian society and to get better negotiation positions before possible peace negotiations. Anyway, let's discuss the Kharkiv direction. Let's begin from this area, because from this territory we are receiving more and more updates from the territory along the border. For example, today we got another video how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians with the use of artillery, tall flamethrower systems, just multiple launch rocket systems. And the most important thing from this video and the next video, this one, is that the Russians were already bombing the territory along the border. So basically this video confirms that Ukrainians are located on the zero line. So for example, this video, exactly this video show us that the Russians were bombing this point, and you can see this on the video in front of your screens, and this is the place on the map, which means that Ukrainians, according to this video, were already somewhere 600 meters before the territory, the first settlement of the Russian Federation. I'm telling you, most likely the Ukrainians will make an attempt to attack in this area. As we discussed in the previous videos, there is a river, very, let's say, not very good river for counterattacks, because if Ukrainians are able to take positions and to take every single settlement along this river, the Russians will have no chances to counterattack and to restore control over these territories. And from these positions, the Ukrainians will have possibilities and every chances to attack the city of Belgrade with artillery, with cluster rounds, with different types of weapon, and this will also, according to Zelensky, give him better negotiation positions, because Ukrainians most likely will abandon these positions, but they will abandon this position in exchange for something, maybe for the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant or something else, or maybe for joining NATO. Obviously the Russians will never accept this, but this can lead to lots of problems. And once again, if we increase the numbers since the beginning of January, we can see lots of geolocations exactly from this territory. According to the number of geolocations, we can make a conclusion that most likely something big is going to happen exactly in this area. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the northern Kupyansk direction. We have lots of very interesting updates. According to information we have, the Russians managed to reach as close as possible the village of Zapadne. At least this information was provided us by neutral mappers and by pro-Russian mappers. As for now, we don't have any geolocation that can confirm this, but obviously this is very interesting. The Russians, as we understand, are trying to improve their positions and to create a very strong foothold on the Ukrainian side of the river of Oskol. If the Russians are able to do this and to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory, first of all, this will allow them to concentrate significant number of units and forces in this area, including heavy weapon, like heavy equipment like tanks, infantry, fighting vehicles, and from this foothold the Russians will be able to attack in any direction. Now let's discuss the situation in the central Kupyansk direction. According to information we have, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Nadia. That was stated by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. According to them, as a result of successful actions, offensive actions, units of the group of forces West managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Nadia. This is the settlement the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation was talking about. Furthermore, we have several reports from different experts and those who have connections on the ground, and of course we have the video. And in this video we can see how the Russian stormtroopers were attacking the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Nadia, and this is another proof that the Russians have strong control over this territory. So summarizing everything, video, Minister of Defense report, and different military experts, let's say posts in the internet and in the open source, we came to conclusion that this entire territory was captured by the Russians. As for this area, most of these territories were considered as a contested area by the end of the 3rd of January, and today by the end of the 4th of January we have no doubts that the territory was captured by the Russians and secured. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the southern Kupyansk direction, where the situation is very difficult. Indeed, during the previous several days the Russians managed to improve their positions, to cross the river of Zherebets and to take under control the village of Ivanovka, and that was very risky and very interesting operation, that if the Russians were able to complete this mission to improve their positions on this side of the river of Zherebets, this could bring the Russians significant benefits. And of course the Ukrainians also understand the situation, and today the Ukrainian sources published the video of how vehicles, tanks of 60th Most Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine were counterattacking the Russian positions on the territory of the settlement with just one single purpose: to force the Russians to fall back from this territory. So we currently don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians managed to restore control over the settlement. This is the vital foothold for the Russians. Obviously they will fight for this territory as long as possible, because if they can't dig in deeper in this area, this situation can be called as the beginning of the forced battle of Liman. So because along this road, exactly using these roads of attack, Kolodezi, Stavki, Myrne, the Russians in 2022 were attacking the city of Liman. So now they're doing the same, and the Ukrainians understand this. So we will keep the map as is. On this video we can see just how the Ukrainians were counterattacking and destroying Russian positions within a very short distance. We don't know for sure whether they managed to restore control over this territory. As for the Sivers direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything, just the regular activities of Russian artillerymen and aviation. As for aviation, this is very important because We haven't been receiving videos for this FAB for a very long period of time, and today different military experts reported that we didn't see the FABs in use because there was a very bad weather all those days since the beginning of November till almost the end of December, and in January the weather became better, and now the Russians are able to start using aviation, and the Russians began doing this. For example, during the previous 24 hours we got a lot of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians with the use of this type of weapon that obviously was the turning weapon, the weapon of victory for the Russians in 2024. Let's see whether the Russians are able to use this type of weapon in 2025. As for the TDS direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. The most important updates are coming from the fields between the settlements of Druzhba, Azaryanovka and Velyka. If we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of December, we're gonna see that for the previous months we received a lots of updates exactly from this territory. The Russians, as you can see, mainly are focused on this fortified area. There are lots of Ukrainian positions, and the Russians are bombing and attacking them, trying to prepare the foothold before further assault operation that most likely is going to take place during the next several days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. The Russians managed to improve their positions, and this is the most important piece of news. According to information we have, according to neutral mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their positions a little bit between the settlement of Zelene and the settlement of Dachne. So this road to the M30 road was captured and secured by the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly in the direction of the settlement of Kotlina. We have a lot of geolocations, as you can see from this area. For example, in this video we can see how the Ukrainians of the 32nd Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine were bombing and attacking the Russian units exactly along this tree line. We see a lot of Russian soldiers that were most likely attacking the Ukrainian positions, and we see Ukrainian drones that were FPV droning them. Based on this video, we have adjusted everything behind this episode. Furthermore, according to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly, and currently the distance between the edge Russian positions and the road T0506 is less than 1 kilometer, which means that maybe the Russians are already on the territory of the road, and the road was cut physically, which means that the railways also were cut physically. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Novosilka. At least this was stated by neutral mappers. So if this information is correct, most likely tomorrow the Russians will begin assault operation in the direction of the settlement of Kupyansk. Now let's discuss the situation in Kurakhove, and according to the number of geolocations that are coming from the village of Dachne, everything should be clear to us what exactly is happening in this area. The number of updates that we can see above the territory of Dachne tell us just one thing: the Russians have begun artillery preparation over this on the settlement of Dachne. The village is under complete Russian fire. The Russians are bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions there with artillery forces, with TOS flamethrower systems, with tanks, with just short rifle fire, which means just one thing: the Russians are about to begin the final battle for this small village as well. And most likely the Ukrainians will not show any resistance in this area, because obviously they understand they are not able to hold their lines in this village. They will most likely fall back, and maybe this upcoming night between the 4th and the 5th of January is going to be the last night for the Ukrainians, and by the morning of the 5th of January the Ukrainians will abandon their positions completely, and they will move further in the western directions towards the settlement of Velyka. Once again, lots of geolocations. Now let's discuss the situation in the Velyka Novosilka direction, and the number and the quality and the geolocations that we received during the previous 24 hours tell us just one thing: the Russians are about to begin also the final battle for this settlement as well. The Russians have been regrouping for the previous 2 weeks. They were concentrating units, forces, bringing fresh forces, and most likely today in the morning or yesterday in the evening of the 3rd of January the Russians finished the process process of regrouping, and today they have already launched or about to launch final assault operation. In this video we just could see how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the northern part of Velyka Novosilka in these farms, so which means that most likely the Russians are going to attack the settlement exactly along these roads of attack. And this is exactly what we were talking about several days ago when we were discussing how exactly the Russians are going to attack the settlement of Velyka Novosilka. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians began advancing from the river of Mokrye Yali in the direction of the settlement of Novosilka. This operation has just one purpose, just to increase Russian control over the road of 510. Now the Russians control some part of the road. Now they want just to expand their positions and to take as much as possible. So to continue offensive operation, because with the fall of Velyka Novosilka, the Russians will face no barriers to move further deep inside of the Dnipro and Zaporizhzhia regions. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, the most important updates are coming as usually these days from the north of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And during the previous 24 hours, we got another batch of episodes and videos of how the Russians were FPV droning and attacking the Ukrainian forces in this area. Once again, during the previous 2 months, we have two suspicious directions. The first one to the west, to the east of Kupyansk, and this direction became very suspicious, very interesting probably several days ago when we start receiving lots of videos of how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions along the border. And the direction to the north of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, almost every single day we receive 2 or 3 episodes, 2 or 3 videos of how the Russians were attacking the Ukrainians in this area, which means that there are lots of Ukrainians here and they are getting ready before the beginning of their offensive in the direction of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And obviously this power plant the Russians will never give the Ukrainians. And of course, despite the fact that the situation is still unpredicted along the line of combat contact, the most important updates are coming from Transnistria. Rolling blackouts have started in Transnistria, leaving inside districts without electricity. We can talk a lot about the Battle of Pokrovsk. We can talk a lot about the Russian goals, Dnipro River, Zaporizhzhia, Bryansk, many other parts of Ukraine. We can talk a lot, but we can't talk a lot about the Transnistria direction because the Russians have just 52 days to find a solution how to start supplying and supporting this region with electricity. Otherwise, this territory will gone completely in blackout without light for a very long period of time. And of course, the Western countries, Moldova and Ukraine, will use the situation, and the Russians will never be able to restore control over this territory in the future. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.